Good evening. I am thrilled to see so many of you here tonight. Welcome to the New Community School. I see lots of faces who have been here for years and years as parents and students and board members, and we see new faces which we welcome to our school. For those of you who don't know us, we are a middle and upper school, college preparatory school, to help students with language-based learning disabilities reach their potential. We help bright children whose skills aren't quite up to their abilities reach their potential by raising those skills. So we're thrilled you're here tonight. We're having this in October because October is National Dyslexia Awareness Month. This is one of many events in our area this month. Riverside School, which we have some parents from Riverside here tonight as well, we welcome you. They are having their event October 20th. They will have a treadathon, and they will have what we call a simulation. They will set up workshops to let us see how it feels to be dyslexic. That you can get that information on their website at riversideschool.org. Also, in November, there is a movie coming to town, which we have flyers outside for you to look at. It's called Dyslexia the Movie, and it is produced by Harvey Hubble, who he himself is dyslexic, and he is an award-winner film producer. This will be showed at the Modlin Center at University of Richmond, and we think that's going to be a wonderful, wonderful night. Some people in the audience have already had a sneak preview, and they tell us it is a real treat. So we welcome you to join us there as well. Tickets are on sale at the Modlin Center for that event. Dyslexia is often misunderstood. Although we've known about it for many, many years, Orton and Gillingham did their work many, many years ago, and we base our work here at our school based on their research. But many people still think it's you read backwards. They don't quite understand how it impacts bright children who might have trouble reading, writing, spelling, or learning their math facts, although they could tell you facts that you would be amazed that they know, or carry on a conversation that would amaze you, or have an astounding vocabulary. But things that we think are simple might be hard for them. We hope tonight you'll learn more about dyslexia. You'll feel hopeful about dyslexia. If you're here as a parent, we know that the journey can often be long and lonely. Here at New Community School, we want to help you in any way we can. If we can answer your questions, we have, many of you have filled out some forms. We have an information form if you would like to be put on our mailing list. Some of you have asked about tours. We will be having admission days coming up in the next few months, but tonight is really outreach to help you understand more about dyslexia. But if you would like to come see our school, we'd be happy to speak with you, happy to give you a tour. And so we hope that maybe you'll hear a little bit about your child or a grandchild, a neighbor. Maybe you know someone who, when they were little, they didn't speak real young. They were late speakers, or maybe they had trouble with rhyme. Could they give you a word that rhymes with cat? Or could they change the k to f and make it fat? Or could they change the ending sound? All those things are indicators when children are young that they may have trouble learning to read. Also, how quickly they can pull up labels. If you give them pictures of well-known things, a house, a dog, a cat, a boy, can they pull that up? It involves their processing speed. But some of our kids start school off just fine. But when it comes to comprehension or learning those math facts or spelling, it becomes hard. No dyslexic is the same. It is a language-based learning disability that affects everybody differently. Tonight, Livia McCoy, our Director of Outreach, is going to share some more facts and research with us about dyslexia. And we are blessed to have one of our own here tonight, Dr. Joe Oley, an alum from our school, is going to share his story about growing up, having a dyslexic learning profile, getting the remediation here at our school, and being a very successful professional, as well as the dad of a dyslexic little boy. So we hope tonight is informative and supportive. Afterwards, we'll take some questions. We have some alums in our audience that might be able to help us answer questions. We have faculty members and board members. So thank you very much for coming. We have water, and if you need restrooms, they're in the hallway to the left. And without further ado, Livia McCoy. Thank you.
Thank you, Nancy. I appreciate that kind introduction. First thing I want to talk about is learning disabilities in general. There's a lot of people misunderstand that term. And to be honest with you, I don't like the term. It's a legal term. I would prefer to call it learning differences because I don't think it's a disability at all. And that's sort of what I want to talk to you about. People who are learning disabled are smart. In fact, they're usually smarter than your average person. They have some skills that are low. Learning disabilities in general have multiple different kinds. There's dyslexia, which is what New Community deals with or helps. Dyscalculia, which is a math disability. Dysgraphia, which has to do with being able to write things legibly. Dyspraxia, which is a motor skills issue. Executive functioning disorder. So there are a lot of different kinds. But here at New Community School, we work with students who are dyslexic. Once again, I want to say these are very smart people. I've been here about 29 years, and I figure that I've taught about 500 kids who are all dyslexic, and every single one of them is different from every other one. So please don't mistake some of the things you hear to think that they're all alike, because they are not. They're very different, but there are some commonalities. And one is that they're smart. Most of them are smarter than I am, but I don't let that intimidate me in the classroom. They have problems with reading and spelling and writing, and sometimes the language of math. It is not expected, given that they're so smart. So you would think they would be able to do those things, but for some reason they cannot. Or maybe they're just not very good at doing it. And it also doesn't have to do with them having poor instruction. So maybe they've been taught like everybody else, and everybody else gets it, but they don't. So that's a sort of a picture of what dyslexia is. Statistically, it's hard to know how many people are dyslexic because dyslexia is hard to diagnose. There are many, many, many dyslexic people who never get diagnosed, but they have a feeling that they might be dyslexic. But we do know a few things. We know that 13 to 14% of the school population in the United States qualifies for special education. But special education covers a lot of things, not just dyslexia. Of those, 5.5% have been diagnosed as dyslexic. There are some estimates that say there may be upwards of like maybe 20% of the population that at least has some characteristics of dyslexia. The Cass Business School in London did an interesting study of entrepreneurs. They interviewed about 139 business owners in the United States and found out that of those 139, 35% of them were dyslexic. And that got me to wondering about our population. We've had about 800 students at New Community School. Oh, mercy, I taught most of them. Anyway, we've had a lot of students through here, and I wondered, how many of them are entrepreneurs? And I follow a lot of them on Facebook, and I started looking at how successful they are and how happy they are. And I started thinking about how school is what's hard for them. Life is not necessarily going to be the hard part. So if you can get them through school, get them through college, then they can start having fun and using all of these wonderful skills that they have. This is not the only research that has determined this. There have been many, many reports of famous people who are dyslexic. Charles Schwab is dyslexic, the CEO of Cisco, and I could go on naming many, many very famous, successful people who are dyslexic. Another interesting study was done at the Krasno Institute. They found that if you are a millionaire, you are significantly more likely to be dyslexic than other people who are not millionaires. So that says something too. What I disagree with is the conclusion that they came, or the reasoning that they give for why they became millionaires. They said it's because they had this disability and they had to overcome it, and they learned how to delegate, and they learned how to do this, and they learned how to do that. And I thought that doesn't really make sense to me. I don't think that's why they are successful. And I read this book a couple of years ago, well, right when it first came out, and our whole faculty read it this past summer because it helped me to grasp a sort of a different way of looking at the dyslexic brain. And it helped me to realize it's not a disability that makes them become millionaires and entrepreneurs. It's an ability. It's a special ability, a special way of thinking. And in this book, they name different sort of reasoning abilities. Like I said, not all of them have all of these abilities, but many of them have these specific ones that are named in the book. I won't go into that because we don't really have time tonight, but I started thinking about these abilities and thinking about the kids that I teach. And as I was reading the book, I asked every one of my students this question. Said, what was your favorite toy when you were a child? And every one of them said Legos. Or a couple of them said Lincoln Logs. Is that what you would say, Joe? So they like to build things, and it's because three-dimensionally in their brain, that's what makes sense. They are great at 3D things. So I continued my questioning, and I asked, what's happening in your brain when you read a book? Because I know when I read a book, I rely on the picture on the cover. And if they don't have a good cover picture, then I don't have any images for what's going on. I like to see the people in the story. Dyslexic people don't need that. They create all that in their own brain. They see these images as they're reading. And I followed up that question by, is it like, can you walk through the set? Is it three-dimensional to you? And without any question, they all said, yeah, I can see, I can walk through the set, I can walk down the roads, and I can turn around, I can see the backs of buildings and things. That's just their ability to think in 3 dimensions. I was working with a student at about that same time who really, really struggles with writing. We were meeting one-on-one on a regular basis to get their research paper finished in time for science fair. He hated it. He hated meeting with me. He hated writing. He hated the whole thing. And I knew how frustrated he was. And yet I tried to encourage him. I tried to say, you can do this. And then I just stopped one day because I could see he was getting frustrated. And I said, I won't name him, but I said his name. And I said, school is what's hard for you. You're going to get out of school, and no one is ever going to ask you to write another paper. When you get out of here, you are going to have fun because you're going to find something to do that matches your strengths. I said, you can do things that I cannot do. I said, tell me something. What can you do because you're dyslexic that I cannot do? And this was his answer, and he didn't have to think about it very long at all. He said, you tell me what you need to do in a building, and I will tell you how you need to build it. I mean, it was like that fast. So this was very recent in the past, so I'm looking forward to his first building, because I'm sure he's going to be building one of these days. I wanted to show you a few of the alums that I've connected with on Facebook. I won't spend a lot of time with these, but I just want you to see some of the special things that some of our alums are doing. I think I have about 40 of these now in that slideshow that was showing when you first got here, and I just picked a few of them out. This is Jay Ryan. He graduated from here in '96, went on to Reinhardt College, graduated in 2000, and he owns a company called Outside the Box Landscape Design. When I told our faculty that, they all laughed and they said, "This is a perfect name for Jay. That is a perfect name for him." That is one of his waterscapes that he designed. He sent me a portfolio of, I don't know, maybe 15 of these very, very beautiful landscapes and other kinds of things that he had done for people in their yards. I was just so incredibly impressed. But he said, "I want you to show that picture." So that's the one you get to see. He loves that one. This is Jonathan Austin. You may have seen him before. He graduated in '89 and then went on to the American Academy of Dramatic Arts. If you go to pretty much any festival anywhere in this area, you will see Jonathan there. And he is so entertaining and so good at what he does. He owns a company called the 24-Hour Emergency Juggling and Magic Service. So by that title, I would think you could call him the night before your party, right? So give him a call. He's wonderful, though. He's very entertaining. The little picture there is when he was at New Community. It's one of his first shows that he did. So you can see that he looks a little different back then, but he struggled in my science class. He really had a hard time, and I used to say, "Jonathan, you might not pass physical science, but you know what? Someday you're going to own this school." And I meant it. This is Alan Baines, graduated in 2002, went on to Virginia Tech to get his undergraduate degree, and right now he's working on his PhD in computer engineering. Those of you who know Alan, when he was here, he was very quiet. He didn't talk very much at all. So we were very excited to hear that he was presented, he presented his paper at the International Conference of Future Computing and Communications in Hong Kong just a few months ago, and he got the best presentation for the whole conference. That's really impressive for someone who really didn't talk very much when he was here. Another, John Shade, graduated in '89. When he was here, he used to be our lifesaver when we would go take the kids swimming. He was into first aid and caring for people in those ways. Now he is a manager of quality and a Six Sigma black belt, which I think is pretty difficult to get, at Alstom. And he says, "This last year I have flown 100,000 miles circling the globe." And he said, "I'm kind of glad he just got promoted to that position." He said, "I don't have to travel quite so much in this new position that he got." This is Rob Scoggins, otherwise known as Skogdog. He is a professional voice actor. He, for a while, for about 3 years, did the Orlando Magic intros at the game, introducing the players as they came onto the court, that big booming voice. That was Rob. He does cartoons, he does advertisements, he does all kinds of things. Right now, he is on a radio show called Handsome Rob's Morning Express. It's out in D.C. I think you can catch it on the web, but the time is always bad, so I've never been able to listen to his show because I think I'm teaching at that point. But nice guy. He came and talked to us last year to tell us a little bit about himself. This is Adrienne Clevenger, graduated in '03, went on to Bridgewater and then later JMU. She's a physician's assistant at Richmond Memorial. And this is one of her little patients, and I thought that was such an adorable picture of her. And she always knew. She knew from 9th grade that that's what she was going to do. So she had her mind made up, and she went out there and did it. And this is Andrew Slater. He visited the school a few weeks ago. He's in town working on a documentary right now about his experiences in the martial arts. He went to Guilford and got his undergraduate. Now he's at Goucher, I believe, getting his graduate degree. He came to speak to the kids recently, I believe, and they were all excited about it. I heard somebody say today that they were considering going to Guilford or maybe Goucher. So I think it was maybe because they had met Andrew. So you can see that we have some very impressive alums, and that's just a few. I've only touched base and found information on 40 out of 800, so really would like to know more about all the rest of them that are out there. Nationally, if you are learning disabled, 38% of those drop out of high school. But at New Community School, most of ours, well, I think I can safely say all of ours graduate, and most of them go on to college. If you look at 2- and 4-year schools, 93% have gone on to college in the last 5 years. And I believe if you look at just 4-year schools, it's a little bit lower, it's 83%. But highly successful, especially if you compare it to other schools nationally. At New Community, we are a mission-driven school. We have a mission to remediate skills, get kids ready for college, and reach out to the community. So tonight, that's part of what we're doing, is reaching out to the community. We do workshops at other schools. We do workshops at conferences. We'll do a workshop pretty much anywhere that there's an interest for it. So please feel free to ask for that if you need that. We raise skills. We know how to do that. We prepare them for college. We know how to do that. We know how to, well, I can't say that we give them a productive and successful life. They do that for themselves, but we get them to the point where they can do that. We do know what works here. Even though we're a special school, if you came and visited our campus, you wouldn't think of us as anything different from anywhere else. We have a very vibrant student life program with sports and clubs and picnics and all those other kinds of events that all schools have. So that's another really special thing about New Community School. So with that, I'm going to turn the podium over to who you really came to see, Joe Oley, who I taught in the 9th grade. I remember teaching him and thinking how smart he is and how sweet he was. And he still is smart. I'm not sure about the sweet part. I have to talk to his wife. But here you are, Joe.
Thanks, Livia. It really is great to come back to New Community and see all of the wonderful changes that have happened over the years. Look at this gym. This is amazing. We didn't have this when I was here. We had to go to St. Joe's Villa for basketball and for gym class. We had to go on a bus. When I was here, we had the main house, we had the science building, the soccer field, and the barn, which I don't know was ever used for anything. Not for us, at least. When Olivia asked me to come back here to speak about my experiences growing up dyslexic, some of my academic achievements, and my academic failures, I knew I couldn't say no. She was giving me an opportunity to give back to the one school that changed my life forever. Maybe my story could help inspire someone else. Now, I'm not an expert in dyslexia. That's these two ladies right here. And I didn't stay at a Holiday Inn Express last night. But I do have 40 years of dyslexic life experience. I'm going to tell you what my story is. I don't know how typical it is or atypical, but it's mine. It was some time ago, back in the dark ages of the 1980s. Guys were wearing piano ties and mullets, and girls were using a lot of hairspray. Michael Jackson was thrilling us with hits like Billie Jean and Beat It, and Madonna was like a virgin. And computers were getting personal, and they were coming into our homes. The Berlin Wall fell, and AIDS was deemed a plague. And while all of this was going on, this school was getting a very firm foothold here. I was a young, pudgy boy at St. Christopher's School. I had already been sent to the principal and the disciplinary board twice for not completing my work and for forging my parents' signature on the detention slips. That's my mother right over there. I was failing out of school. I didn't have any good friends. I had no athletic ability, and I always kept to myself. I was sad most of the time. From my 11-year-old perspective, my life sucked. I hated it. I was a failure at all the things that mattered to a young boy: school, sports, and friends. I didn't do any of it right. And when you're 11 years old, and your teachers and other adults and your friends are telling you over and over, you're not smart enough for that. You're dumb. Why are you so stupid? Why don't you even try to do better? You're a failure. I'm sorry, but you're just not worth it. You're too lazy for that. You believe them, and that begins to define how you see yourself. You see yourself as not worth it. From my 11-year-old perspective, they were right. I was all of those things. I was the dumb, fat, lazy kid. And I'd wager to say that some of you here tonight have heard these kind of things before. Maybe from when you were a kid. Maybe from one of your students. Maybe from your own kid. But no matter where you hear it, it's tough to see a kid that feels hopeless and lost. So I'm sitting at my desk while the rest of the class is outside running around and enjoying recess. I could hear them laughing, carrying on as they ran past the school's window. I wasn't allowed to go to recess again because I didn't finish my work again. This day was one of the days I'd been in front of the disciplinary review board. I had been scared to death. I didn't know what to expect as I stood there on trembling knees in front of the academic firing squad. I knew I was in big trouble, but I didn't know how to handle it. The anxiety, the fear, and the stress of facing the panel of adults wrecked me. The disciplinary board doled out their sentence and sent me back to class, which is why I didn't have enough time to finish my work that day. It was their fault. My English teacher, she was standing above my desk, peering down at me as I did my work from her adult perspective. She was getting ready to say something, and I just really wasn't in the mood to hear whatever she had to say. She was why I was kept getting in trouble. She's the one who kept rushing me through all my work. She was the teacher that was failing me. I'd already been before the firing squad. Did I really need one more adult cracking the whip of disappointment and shame? I wanted to lash out. I was angry. I was crying for help, but no one could hear. My teacher obviously knew I was upset, and she was not a monster. She wanted to console me and say something nice. So she said, "Joey, you're a good egg. You're just lazy." Oh, lazy. I've heard it all my 11 years. Why are you so lazy? If you tried a little more, maybe you wouldn't be so lazy. There's nothing wrong with you. You're just lazy. If you weren't so lazy, maybe you wouldn't be so fat. To this day, almost 30 years later, it still stings to think about it. I look back as an adult and I wonder, how could they be calling me lazy? I went to school 7 hours a day. I had an hour of after-school tutoring. And then I had an hour or two of homework. I was working 9 to 10 hours a day, but I was getting further and further behind. This is how my time at school went, failing classes and learning how lazy and stupid I was. St. Christopher's recommended to my parents that I get educational testing done. Testing revealed that I was dyslexic and dysgraphic, but that was not all. The doctor told my parents that I would graduate high school, but that college was probably not in my future. He also told them that I should seek an exemption from the foreign language requirement of high school because English was tough enough for kids like me. My mother would tell me later in life how this prediction infuriated her. She knows, just like I bet every parent here tonight knows, your kid is not a hopeless failure. We ended up going to New Community School, a really, really small school. Coming from St. Christopher's, where each class had at least 20-some kids in it, we had one class here that only had 2 students in the class. And when he was sick that day, it was just you. There was nowhere to hide. I came in as an 8th grade student, reading and writing at a 4th grade level. My math skills were equally as poor. I could add and I could subtract, and I was in the 8th grade. I came from a school where I was an outcast. I didn't fit in there at all. It was no fault to the school. It was just a bad fit. Like I said before, I didn't have any real friends there. I had some heavy, emotional baggage I was lugging around with me. And I think that's pretty common for students that don't get diagnosed until later in life. The longer it takes for you to get help, the more likely it is that you're going to have some social and emotional baggage. But when I came to New Community, things really changed. I made friends, and not the kind of friends that liked you because there was nobody else cooler around. I made good friends. Here, I fit in. Here, I belonged. Here, everybody else was just like me, different, and that was okay. I remember my friend Richard Wood and I. After school, sometimes we'd go down to Roy's Burger and get the greasiest burger that they had. We would take it over to Bryan Park and eat it on the rocks, and we would talk for hours just about stuff. We discussed comic books. We said, you're either a Marvel fan or you're a DC fan, but you couldn't be both. Who was your favorite superhero? If you had a superpower, what would it be? I remember Richard wanted to fly. I wanted the ability to heal. I also remember meeting one of the most remarkable and memorable young men I've ever met in my life. You saw his picture up there. Jonathan Austin was a year older than I, but he possessed amazing talents. If you've ever had the privilege to see Jonathan juggle, he's riding a 7-foot unicycle. He's juggling 6 or 7 things that are on fire, and he's looking at you in the crowd, and he's making fun of you. I mean, talk about the ultimate multitasker. I remember my math teacher, Bill Dietrich. He taught me how to multiply. Mind you, I was in the 8th grade. My own kids learned it in 3rd. Mr. Dietrich was one of those laid-back, cool characters. He never got his feathers ruffled. He never raised his voice. And he was a pretty good artist, too. He taught one of my other favorite electives I took here, comic book art. Do they still offer it? Well, you should. Like so many other alumni, Livia McCoy was my science teacher. I remember she taught me the physics of how pulleys work and how to calculate force. But we didn't just memorize formulas and plug in numbers. It was hands-on learning. She also recommended me to the Governor's School Science Camp, which is a whole nother amazing experience that I got because of being here. Miss Greenwood, the former head of school, always greeted me with warm hugs and big smiles, and I remember thinking how cool it was to know someone famous, because I knew for a fact that she was Cagney from the hit show Cagney and Lacey. I see some of y'all have met her. And of course, there was Frances Ray, the school secretary, who knew everyone's name and what class they were supposed to be in when she found us roaming the house. The amazing part of all of this is that I don't remember some of the people I met yesterday. I don't remember my high school teachers. I barely remember my college professors. But I do remember New Community. I remember they taught me how to hold a pencil. I never knew I was doing that wrong. But mostly, I remember they taught me how to type. My dysgraphia was explained to me like this when I was a kid. Your brain moves too fast for your hand to keep up. You're just too smart. That's how my mother put it. So I learned to type. And typing for me was like breaking through the dysgraphic handcuffs. It was like when Forrest Gump sprinted out of his leg braces, looking down at his legs in amazement and going, "Oh, I can run." Well, I could type. I was typing 98 words a minute with 100% accuracy. I could get my thoughts out, down on paper. It was no longer a struggle to write a sentence. a paragraph, a page. I was writing stories on my own, not because there was a work assigned to me. I remember learning fundamentals class, where Carrie Justice and I were the only two kids in this particular class. We learned the Greek and Latin prefixes, suffixes, and roots of words. This skill would pay off greatly when I entered pharmacy school, since most of the medical language is rooted in Latin. In the 2 years I spent at New Community, I moved from a 4th grade level to a 12th grade level in reading, writing, and math. I was transformed from a failing student that hated school into a successful, confident young man. I was on a roll. No more summer school. No more after-school tutors. No more failing grades. No more disciplinary boards and academic firing squads and feeling like a failure. It's a wonderful thing when you can set your mind to something and get it done. Too many people take that for granted. I could read and I could write now, and I was pretty good at both. I had skills that I could rely on. New Community didn't just get me through school and send me on my way. They taught me how to get through, how to excel, remediation, organization, study skills, self-esteem, and academic confidence. My perspective changed on life. I was no longer the sad, hopeless failure I used to be. I had a hunger to learn and prove myself. I had the skills, I had the work ethic, and I had the determination. I left New Community and finished up high school at Douglas Freeman, where I was an AB student. My years there were pretty typical of any other high school kid. I played sports, I joined clubs, I hung out with my friends, and I did, however, against professional advice, sign up for Spanish class. Way back when, the doctor told me to seek an exemption from this in high school. Well, I wasn't. I was just as capable as those other kids, maybe even more, because of what I learned here. I continued to use the color-coding system of organization, and I continued to work twice as hard. By the time I graduated high school, I could read, write, and speak English and Spanish. I took the SATs and scored 1380 out of 1600. I applied to 4 colleges and was accepted to all of them. I ended up going to Philadelphia at the Philadelphia College of Pharmacy and Science. Here, I was known as the notes guy. My notes were highly coveted and sought after. Somehow, this dyslexic, dysgraphic kid took the best notes. Well, yes and no. I doubt anyone wanted the notes I actually took in class, because I know no one could decipher my own personal hieroglyphic shorthand. But after class, I would take my textbook, my lecture hieroglyphs, and I would combine them in a typed outline format as a hybrid of all the information. The notes were thorough and they were complete. I would give them to any of my friends who may have missed a class or two. I even had one of my friends who was selling my notes to fraternities. It turns out those typing skills were paying off, just not to me. So were the Latin and Greek roots that I learned. I also discovered another gift that dyslexia gave me. I could visualize, in my mind's eye, 3-dimensional objects and rotate them. So for instance, looking at a chemical name on a piece of paper, I could visualize the structure, those little models we used to build. In advanced pharmacokinetics, which is the study of how drugs move throughout the body, it was important to know the shape, angle, pitch of the drug. If it wasn't just right, it wouldn't fit into the biological receptor in the body. That's how drugs work. I also learned that memorization was not enough at this level of college. My older brother, who is also a pharmacist, told me, first, learn how the body works. Pathophysiology, or the study of disease in the body, is key to understanding drugs. Some of my classmates viewed patho, as we called it, as something to cross off the required list. But for me, it was essential to understanding how drugs worked. I couldn't just memorize it, I had to understand it. I finished up my pharmacy degree and decided to apply for the doctorate program. In my interview, I told my professor about my academic struggles and how I overcame them. I told her about New Community and the skills I learned and how they got me thus far. I felt pretty good leaving the interview. I thought it was a home run. I mean, this was Philadelphia. Everybody roots for the underdog. Rocky Balboa was a way of life. But it occurred to me, they only take the top 5% of applicants. They only wanted the cream of the crop, the creme de la creme, the best and the brightest. Why would they waste a spot on some kid with learning disabilities? I let the cat out of the bag. I kind of shot myself in the foot on that one. But thankfully, they did accept me, and I eventually graduated with my doctorate degree in pharmacy. Not bad for a kid with learning disabilities that wasn't supposed to even graduate college. That's another thing. I've never liked being referred to as having a learning disability. I learned right here, the prefix dis means without. Learning disability is without the ability to learn, and nothing is further from the truth. We are not learning disabled. We learn differently. We see the world differently. We approach problems differently. We truly are the out-of-the-box thinkers. For way too long, I struggled to fit in and be just like everyone else. It never worked. I didn't fit in with everybody else because I'm different. But I'm not disabled. When I was younger, my parents taught me to never use your dyslexia as an excuse. Never let anyone tell you that you aren't smart enough or that you aren't good enough. Never be ashamed of who you are. You will have to work twice as hard. You will have to work twice as long, and it never comes easy. But you never stop trying. You never give up to be the best that you can. My parents never hid the fact that I was dyslexic. Often, I talk to other parents about their children and some of the difficulties they face. Too often, I see embarrassment and shame on their faces. They lean in close as we stand together, whispering. They speak in code, looking over their shoulder, spelling the really important words. I've always wanted to go, I'm dyslexic too, right? From my perspective, it's ridiculous, it's silly, but I do see it from their point of view. I've seen firsthand the condescending smiles and fake empathy from other people that just don't understand dyslexia and how it affects you. I've been on the receiving end of those glares, both as an adult and as a parent. I understand why people want to keep their issues private. I don't agree, but I do understand. How are we supposed to make changes if no one is willing to speak up? We should be teaching our kids to embrace who they really are, not to be ashamed like they're less than someone else. The kids need their confidence. They need their self-esteem. They need their superpower. I'm not saying we should wear a scarlet D around our neck. And surely we don't want to label our kids. But we certainly shouldn't be lying to them about who they are. New Community and my parents taught me how to believe in myself. Throughout all of my years as a student, I never forgot the wonderful people and skills that I learned here at New Community. Those 2 years I spent here forever changed the course of my life. If there's any teachers, tutors, or educators here tonight, I'd like to thank you each personally. You're giving kids like me a fighting chance. Kids the system has failed. Kids that others have given up on. Kids that have given up on themselves. Often we come to you broken, beaten, and scarred. Through your hard work and your patience, your compassion, you both teach and you heal us. I'm here today because of men and women like you that didn't give up on me and those others like me. You unleashed my potential and changed my life, and I want to thank you. If I had to sum everything up, we are not disabled. We're differently enabled. This is not a disease. It is not a character flaw. It's nothing evil or punishment of any kind. We have the same potential as any other kid does. I'm not telling you it's easy, because it's not. It's hard work, and change doesn't happen overnight. My dyslexia held me down for many years. Once I embraced it, learned how to deal with it, I was able to overcome and achieve things no one had ever planned for me, except for my parents. They always knew. They always tried to get me the best help. And once they finally did, I was free. Tonight, I've spoken a lot about perspective, mine and others. There's one more perspective I want you to see. My son was 7 years old when he made this video I'm going to show you. Some of you may have seen it. I think you'll find that he speaks honestly and from his heart.
Hi, my name is Max Oli, and I have dyslexia, dysgraphia, and ADHD. First I'll be talking about the dysgraphia, and dysgraphia is having trouble with your writing. So when I was younger and I was in my old school, I was having a lot of trouble with my writing. So my writing was like all sloppy and no words correct. So I was having a lot of trouble until I moved. But now I'm doing pretty good. So I'm gonna tell you a little story, what it means to be dyslexic and what it means not. So my dad, he told me a story about this. So it's about tables. So there's a red table and there's a blue table. All the tables are blue, but one's red. Doesn't make any difference, just different colors. That is the exact thing. There's one person that works one way, one person that works another. Every single one works one way, but one brain just doesn't. That's all. My reading, I was having trouble with not every word, but a lot of words. So my reading was all slowing down, like done one word, think, one word, think, kind of like that. So I was having a lot of trouble with that, but more trouble than my writing, a lot more. ADHD means brain moving super fast. Say you're talking like super fast and no one understands you. You're talking so fast. That is ADHD. Well, I'm in old school. Everyone is making fun of me just because I had dyslexia. So now that I moved, everybody's real good with me.
How did you feel at your old school?
But I felt real sad at that school. I felt like I was the dumbest kid there, and everybody's gonna feel like that at dyslexia. Well, when I didn't finish my work on time, she would just say 5 minutes and 10, then 15, but I never set out whole recess. That's how. Yeah.
Miss Recess?
Yeah, I missed recess for no reason. No reason. I don't know why. Those kids.
Didn't get your work done?
Well, because I had dyslexia. I mean, it's not saying that it's bad, but you have to do things slower. That's all. So finally, I got a tutor, I moved, and everything's doing awesome. I got my best friend in my class, my second best friend now, my new class, and I got a bunch of friends now. So now everything's doing super hot. So the good things about being dyslexic is So you can make a bunch of friends. You can do all that kind of stuff. My good thing about dyslexic is making a bunch of friends, and I'm an awesome builder. I build marbles. I build Legos. I build like the biggest marbles and Legos. And guess what? There's no instructions with me. I don't use instructions. I only do it once in a while with instructions. Most of the time, no instructions. And that's another thing that dyslexic, that ADHD gives you. Brain moving so fast, you can think of whatever. ADHD, sometimes your brain can move so fast that when somebody asks you a question, split second you can answer it. Those people that think they're smarter than you, opposite way around. You could be smarter than them. Yep. Or have to, like, if you got a teacher that knows how to teach you, guess what? There you go. You're smarter. You could be that smartest in that class.
Bex, what do you want to be when you grow up?
I want to be a scientist.
Do you know a lot about volcanoes?
Pretty much everything. I know the most volcanic place on Earth. I know a very bad, destructive 3-cone volcano that blew up, and two volcanoes, and one collapsed, but now they can't see them, only one. And I know a bunch of their names, so that's one. But if you have dyslexia, never give up. Never give up, even if you don't.
Wow. Joe's story is pretty powerful, and Max's story, I don't know, kind of competes with Dad's. They're both pretty special. We hope you've learned some tonight about dyslexia. We hope you feel hopeful. If you have a child who's been diagnosed with dyslexia, or if you're trying to figure out how to help your child, we hope you'll call us and let us know how we can help you help your child.